This is lesson 2 of unit 1 of Mega Goal 1. In order to benefit from this lesson, it is recommended that you work on lesson 1, unit 1 of Mega Goal 1 before you get to this, because this lesson is a follow-up for the previous lesson. These lessons are designed for 40 minutes, but depending on the number of students, the ability of the students, sometimes the lessons might carry on more than 40 minutes. But as the students get more and more used to the tools, they will start to move about faster. So this is, as we said, Unit 1, Lesson 2, Mega Goal 1. In this lesson, the most important question that we always ask is, what are we going to learn and be able to do in this lesson? And the we means the student. In this lesson, we can see a printed sentence, that is the sentences that we're reading, made up of 4 to 6 details, and tell does not mean speak. It means what the brain can do, what each detail is. So our focus is going to be on the vocabulary, the making questions for details, and comparing and contrasting details. So these are the 2 pages that we'll be working on. Now, what is really important is not the number of pages that we finish, but more important, what can we do? So anything we learn here is going to spill over to the next pages. Now, this is the opening task. And again, if you watched the previous videos, there are 4 principles for the opening task. Please watch the other videos in order to know what the principles are. Here's the opening task. And once the students start getting used to these tools, they move a lot faster. What you're going to tell them is, find each of these words in the text and write the number of the paragraph you found it in. So the students will go to the books right here on this page, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We've got 5 sections, and the students need to find these words and write the number of the paragraph they found them in, like 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want to give them 2 to 3 minutes. And again, what is the purpose of this? In addition to code switching, which means moving from native language to target language, the minute you find these words stand out in your mind. So if we just put the word and start working on it, the mind has not, between quotation marks, held it yet. So when we want to learn, we need to do something in order to get the mind of the human being to hold the words. And notice that everybody can do it. And that's the most important thing. At the beginning of every session, we got to get everyone involved in doing something. Paying attention does not mean that everybody is paying attention. So after you give them 2 or 3 minutes, it's all right if they don't find everything. You will say, okay, let's find the paragraphs. Don't waste time asking each person where they found a word. That takes up too much time. Just put it on the slide and let them see it. So affect is in the first one at the top. Launch is in the 4th one. Take for granted is in the 4th one. Establish is in 1 and 2. Host is in 2. So what has happened now, the students have found these words. You might ask them to underline it or circle it. It doesn't matter. But the idea is now, even if we don't know the meaning, the words are standing out in our minds, ready for the next. Now, remember, brown is always the introduction. Green is one of the learning. So this is something we learned before, and we're going to use this one as a demo to help the students learn what to do in the next slides. You're going to tell them, write the word that we found and copy the sentence in which you found the word, then write the details of that sentence in the chart. So this is going to be a demonstration. What are we going to do first? We're going to write the word that we found. Good. Then we're going to copy the sentence or sentences in which we found the word. Okay? We copied the sentence. Look at some of the important events that have changed the word. So if they're copying this sentence, they are actually highly engaged in looking at the book and copying English words, even though it doesn't mean much yet. Now let's go to meaning. We're going to break this sentence apart into its parts of the simple sentence, but today's sentence is a complex sentence. So it has a sentence and it has a clause in it. So let's look at it. Look at. Well, there is no who, what, so we're going to start with the verb or the action. Look at. Look at what? Some of the important events. All right, that's the sentence. It's done. However, that have changed the world and affected the lives of many people in modern times is a clause that is talking about some of the important events. So notice how a clause works. A clause talks about one of the details in the simple sentences. So what we have noticed here is look at, not look at some of the important events that have changed the world and affected the lives of many people in modern times. And we have highlighted affected as it is the word that we're going to be working on. Now, let's think about the word that. That is a relative that refers to the detail. Sometimes the clause might appear in the how or the where or the when or the who and the what here, but this one appears here. So this whole clause is talking about this detail. Now, have changed the world, this is what we've got, have changed the world and affected the lives of many people in modern times. So the word that is replacing some of the important events. So the actual sentence that has been changed into a clause is some of the important events have changed the world and affected the lives of many people in modern times. Now, this is a what? Some of the important events have changed is the action, have changed what? The world, and is the joining word for the two sentences. Now, it's also have affected, but when you put it in a compound, you don't have to put the auxiliary twice. So affected is the action. Affected what? The lives of many modern people in modern times. The lives of many people in modern times. Have affected what? You can't say the lives of many people because that is not enough information. Have affected the lives of many people in modern times. It's all one detail. So this is how our minds read this sentence. So what we want the students to do is to do the same thing with the other words and sentences. So let's have a look. What's the next word? So give them some time. Now the whole task with the next few words can be 5 to 7 minutes. But the first time they're doing it, I mean, at the beginning of the year, it's going to take a lot more time because a few, if not a lot, of the students usually are passive and trying to not do anything and hoping that learning will happen. Learning will not happen unless you are doing something. And listening and looking is not doing something, okay? All right. So give them some time. After they have finished, I mean, you can walk around, say, all right, we've got, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes per sentence, all right? Don't stop, don't talk too much. Let them work on it, walk around and see if they're doing it. When they finish, now you might do two strategies. You might do all the sentences first and then give feedback, or you might give feedback after every sentence. At the beginning of the year, I recommend that you give feedback after every sentence in case they're doing something wrong, then it's not too late to fix it, okay? So what's the next word? Launch. What was the sentence it was in? The Russians launched the world's first satellite, Sputnik 1, on October 1957. Well, what do you know? That was October 4th, which was yesterday, and that was what? Nearly 60, oh, it is 63 years ago. All right. So let's break it apart into simple sentences. The Russians, what's the action? Launched. Launched what? The world's first satellite, Sputnik 1. Okay, and on October 4th, 1957 is the when. You got that? Okay, now let's do it again. Tell them to do the next word, or as I said, by the middle of the year or after the first 2 or 3 months, they start to know how to work alone. Don't expect independent and autonomous work from the beginning of the year because a lot of our students are not used to it. Again, we put the word established. We put the sentence. In 1902, he regained Riyadh, beat the city garrison, took the Masmak fortress, and established his headquarters in the city. Now, remember the word he in this passage was referring to the late King Abdulaziz. Now, why do we have in 1902 at the beginning? I will tell you in a few minutes, all right? So we break up the sentence, he. And what's the action? Regain. Regained what? Riyadh. Okay. But this is a series of sentences with one single who. So what we really need is another he, but we don't need to write it, but we will write the action beat. Beat what? The city garrison. Okay. Then we put another one and say took. Took what? The Masmak fortress. That's not a where. What did he take? Not where did he take it. What did he take? The Masmak fortress. And finally, established. Established what? His headquarters. Now, notice I put it in bold because that's the word we're going to look. Established what? His headquarters. Where? In the city. So notice that this sentence has one single who, but for four actions, for who and what, or what in this case, and one where. And of course, always remind them to put a period and to start with a capital. But what happened to 1902? All right. So 1902 is the when. But why did we put it at the beginning? We put it at the beginning. So when we change, this is the regular place of the when. But when we change the place of the regular detail, or where detail regular appears, we are emphasizing. So in order to emphasize the year, the sentence started with in 1902. Automatically, we know that the writer of this thinks that that is a very important year and wants us to pay attention to it. So the writer puts it at the beginning. So remember when we change the regular place of a detail, okay. So if you wanted to stress in the city, you might put it in a different place. In the city, he established his headquarters. So when you say in the city, he established his headquarters, which is not the regular order of a simple sentence, it simply means you're emphasizing it. I hope that this helps everybody. Now, let's go to the next one. You give them a couple of minutes or less to find a word, copy the sentence, and then break it apart into the simple sentence. So take for granted is one vocabulary item. The sentence is, what we take for granted today were part of science fiction only 40 years ago. If you notice the way I'm reading the sentence, it breaks a little bit for a microsecond after each detail. This is a tricky sentence because even though it's not a complex sentence, it uses a clause as one of the details. Let's have a look. What we take for granted today, that's a clause. It's acting as the subject of the sentence. It's a noun clause. The real verb is were. Were what? Part of science fiction. When? Only 40 years ago. So you notice the sentence, if you want to understand it, what we take for granted today were part of science fiction only 40 years ago. And this is going to help the students comprehend. And the better that the students comprehend, the better that they learn. Okay, so remember, that's a noun clause acting as a detail. And now the final one, I think. Again, the word is host, and the sentence is Abu Dhabi now hosts its own Grand Prix at Yas Marina Circuit. And since this is a compound sentence, it's not necessary to continue, or else we'll have to write two sentences. But let's break it apart. Abu Dhabi hosts what? Its own Grand Prix. Where? At Yas Marina Circuit. What happened to the word now? Okay, so I'm sorry, we need to remove this. It's not a noun clause anymore. but that is one of the hazards of um, copy paste, which we always need to move a little faster. So we put the word now here, even though we put it in front of host to emphasize it. But it is a when detail, right? So the actual sentence is Abu Dhabi now hosts its own Grand Prix at Yas Marina Circuit, okay? Now is the when. So let's go to the book now, and you ask them to work alone. And you say, reread the vocabulary words in the sentences, look at the details that come before and after each word, decide on the meaning, and select the best meaning for each. See page 7, part A in your book. So this is from the student's book. Remember, how do we find the meaning of the word? Well, in a sentence. Well, if you cannot find the details, it's going to be very difficult to find the meaning. So just reading before and after is not enough. You've got to find the details, convert the details into actions and WH words that will help you do much better. There are around 70 methods for unlocking the meaning of the words, but we will be going through those as we move along, okay? After you give them some time, tell them to work alone and then check your answer. So check your answer. And again, don't waste time by going around and asking each person, all right? That's not the way to do it, all right? But you might ask 2 or 3 people just for emphasis or for converging the attention of the students back to you. So number 1, to affect would be C, to produce a change, launch, to send into space, D, to take for granted, is to provide, to accept as part of life, to establish is to set up or to start, and to host is to provide a place for something, okay? So for example, you might be having a celebration that you're going to graduate from high school, and your parents host the celebration for you in their home or in a venue. Now, check your learning. Before we move, we want to tell you what to do with this, all right, to work alone. Check your learning. Again, look at this one. It says true or false, right? That is just the tip of the iceberg. So let's read the instructions. Underline the details in each sentence, then write the detail meaning above it. Then go to the paragraphs. If all the details in this sentence are the same as all the details in the paragraph, then the sentence is true. But if at least one detail is different, then the sentence is false. So you give them time. Again, if this is the first time they do it, you might want to do one as a demo. So let's have a demo, okay? Underline the details we said in each sentence and write the detail meaning. So let's underline the detail. Sputnik is a what? Was is the verb or the action. The name of a Russian spaceship is the what? Okay? So we have 3 details here. Now, when we are reading the passage, we don't just look for the words, we look if the details are the same. Sputnik is Sputnik, was is was. The name of a Russian spaceship. Sorry, it was not the name of a Russian spaceship. It was the name of a Russian satellite, which is completely different. A spaceship carries people, whereas a satellite is like all these satellites we have orbiting Earth for communication. It doesn't have any body in it, okay? It doesn't carry people from one place to another. So it's supposed to stay around the Earth or in an orbit. That's why we call it a satellite, all right? Okay, so what do you think? If this was Sputnik was not the name of a Russian spaceship, it was the name of a Russian satellite, then we say false. So you might want to use this by itself as a demo for the student on the previous slide, and then say, okay, you continue. And again, when they finish, you make sure that they can check their answers here. So let's look at this. King Abdulaziz is a who. Set is the action or the verb. Set what? He didn't set Saudi Arabia. He didn't set Saudi Arabia on the road. He set Saudi Arabia on the road to modernization. That's the detail. He set Saudi Arabia. What did he do? He set what? Saudi Arabia on the road to modernization. Now, we check the paragraph on in the book, and we say King Abdulaziz is there, said. If all the details are the same, then we say true. We don't just write haphazard true or false. We need to learn something. And in this case, we learn how to find the details, and then we double check the details. If the details are the same, not necessarily written exactly the same, but with the same meaning, then it's true. At present, the UAE has 10 members. So at present is the when, and notice we put it at the beginning because that's an emphasis. What the UAE verb has what? 10 members. Well, actually it has 7 member states. Therefore, false. And of course, you can continue with your students and say, this is not in 1963, this is in 1973, so it's false. Digital forms of information are something of the past. What digital forms of information are? Okay, something of the past? Well, no, it says something of the present, right? So it makes it false. Now, if you want to give your students a true or false item, okay, if we have a true or false item, then you need to know what you're doing. If the students cannot find the details, then they cannot compare and contrast. So when we said at the beginning, compare and contrast, this is what we mean. You are comparing and contrasting the details in the sentence with the details in the paragraph. Your brain is actually comparing and contrasting. Now, the next step is, since we learned this, we need to learn how to make a question to find a detail. So this is what we're going to learn now. Going back to the graphic organizer that we have for the simple sentence, the sentence is, the Russians launched the world's first satellite, Sputnik 1, on October 4, 1957. If we want to know the who or what detail, then we ask the question with the rest of the details, like who launched the first satellite, Sputnik 1, on October 4th, 1957? The question mark. Make sure that they've got the question mark. So you can use this as a demo to explain it. And then we do the visible thinking. So the who is asking about the missing detail. Now, here, the Russians launched on October 4, 1957. There is a detail missing. Which detail? All right. So the detail that is missing is what? The Russians launched what? They didn't launch a who. They launched a thing, Sputnik 1, right? And that is the detail that is missing, and we add it. Now, when did the Russians launch the world's first satellite, Sputnik 1? So we say the Russians launched the first. So I'm using one sentence as a demonstration so that the students can learn that a question is asking about a missing detail. All right. And in this case, the missing detail is the when. All right. Take some time, work on it by yourselves first until you're absolutely confident. Don't waste too much time with the did and the lunch. They have been learning English for a long time. Let it come naturally. If they don't, then you can spend some time going into it. All right. So these are things that they should have learned in the middle school and in the elementary. All right. Now, check your learning. So what you're going to say here, write a question for each of these sentences. Start your question with the question word provided in the parentheses, and leave it open. You know, you say, I want a question with what? Now, there are lots of what's here, but they can write one question or 3 questions for the what. Here, say, I want this sentence with a question of where, and here I want this question with the word when. So let's have a look. And this, give them some time, obviously, and then check your answer. So what did he regain in 1902? What did he take in 1902? What did he establish in the city in 1902? These are all what questions. So they can write 1 or 3 or more than that. Abu Dhabi, where does Abu Dhabi host its own? This is should be its own, not its one. Sorry. All right, we fix that. And when was what we took, when was what we take for granted part of science fiction? When was what we take for, notice that when is only 40 years ago. But remember, what we take for granted, what we take for granted is the whole detail. So when was what we take for granted, this is it, what we take for granted, or you can add the word today, there is no problem with that, part of science fiction only 40 years ago. All right? Now, the most important part of the learning is to develop the student's language. Language means oral, listening and speaking. And that can only be developed, not student-teacher, but student-student. So what you're going to ask them to do here is write 1 question for each paragraph in the book. You should have 4 questions minimum. Then in pairs, ask your partner a question and your partner should answer from the paragraph like this. So the students are sitting in pairs, A and B. They have their books in front of them. And the first student, after they finish writing the question, will ask the second student, when was the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia officially established? And the second student will answer, on September 23, 1932. And by the way, knowing how to say the dates and the numbers are an essential part of IELTS exams. Learning the numbers, how to say the numbers, because in listening, if you mishear the number, you might get the wrong answer. So what you want the students, again, to work in pairs. Student A will have 4 questions on the 4 paragraphs. Student B will also have 4 questions. A will ask B his or her questions. B will ask A his or her own questions. All right? Again, the first time this is done will take a little bit longer, but as the students get used to working alone, it should not take more than 6 to 10 minutes of the 40 minutes. Now, the last part, remember, the last part, the assessment task, is designed in such a way so that you can reuse it in an exam. All you need to do is change the text. So let's read. Write a question word and one of the vocabulary items in each blank. So if you want to do this in a test, what do you change? You keep the same words. You keep the same words, but you change the black into new information. Where do you get the words? From a previous lesson or from a previous year. The words here should always be familiar from previous lessons. So give them some time to do this, but as they become better and better, this might come down to practically 3 minutes. And this helps you design your test. So we need a question word and we need a vocabulary word. So give them some time to work alone. And then obviously you want to give them the answers so that they can check their answer. I would like to thank you very, very much. And thank you again. Remember, you can find all these lessons, and the more time I get, the more I will be able to put these lessons up. So please forgive me for the delay, because this, I might have said in a previous video, it actually takes around 3 hours from designing the lesson to putting it on a video and uploading it. And you can go to the YouTube channel right here and find all the other lessons. Thank you very much. And these are my contact details. So until the next lesson comes up, thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you again.